was thinking we could go downstairs soon because they're gonna finish they're finishing the light. I think they finished the painting.
Yeah,
They're
the
gonna
painting looks like it's
وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وفقها وعملا في الدين يا رب العالمين. بعد. So Alhamdulillah, we are continuing our Ramadan workshop. Last week we spoke a little bit about the conditions of fasting, shurut as-sawm. We mentioned three conditions last week. Number one, we said al-Islam. So in order for fasting to be obligated upon someone, and in order for his fasting to be accepted, he must be a Muslim. Number two, we mentioned al-aql. The person must have sanity. He must be sane in order for fasting to be obligatory upon him and other acts of worship. We spoke about it in detail. Number three, al-bulugh. The person, him or her, must reach the age of puberty. And we spoke about that in detail last week. So we're going to continue from there, inshallah. We're continuing the shurut and the conditions for fasting to be obligatory upon someone. Condition number four, al-iqamah. The person must be a resident, meaning that he is not fasting. So if you are in your location and you're a resident and you're not traveling, fasting is an obligation upon you. Therefore, if you are a traveler, fasting is not an obligation upon you. Should you fast? Should you not fast? Is it better to fast? Is it better to break your fast? This is a different masala. This is a different subject. And the scholars have spoken about it, and there's much different. But the question is, if you are a musafir, if you are a traveler, is it obligatory, is it wajib upon you to fast? Then the answer is no. Therefore, if you are muqim and you are a resident, fasting is obligatory upon you, and this is an ijma'. This is an agreed upon among all of the scholars. There's no khilaf on that. So if you're not a traveler and you're in your city, you have no valid excuse to break your fast, unless there's any other excuse to break your fast. If you're a muqim, it is obligatory upon you to fast. So that condition is very self-explanatory, inshallah. We're going to move on to the next condition. Condition number 5, الطهارة من الحيض والنفاس. And this condition is specific to the woman. Specific to the woman, that she must be pure from the menstrual cycle and postpartum bleeding. Al-hayd refers to the menstrual bleeding, the menstrual cycle. So if a woman is on her menstruals, then it is not obligatory upon her to fast. In fact, she is not allowed to fast. So if a woman fasts while she's on her menstruals, her fasting is not accepted and her fasting is not valid. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that إِذَا حَضَتْ لَمْ تُصَلِّي وَلَمْ تَصُومِي أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. If she is in a state of her menstruals, she doesn't fast and she doesn't pray. So one of the women who was very curious and she wanted to learn, she asked Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And she said, "Oh Aisha radiallahu anha, why is it that the women make up their fasting later on, but they don't make up their prayers?" So it's obligatory upon the woman on her menstruals to make up her fasting after the month of Ramadan. She has to make it. She has to make up her days, but she doesn't have to make up her salah. This was the command of the Messenger ﷺ. Her response was, and this is very important for all of us, when it comes to the subject of taslim and submission to Allah and His Messenger alayhi salam, she says, "Kunna nu'maru biqada'i as-sawm wa lam nu'mar biqada'i as-salah." Very simple. She said, we were commanded with making up the fasting, but we weren't commanded with making up the salah. So sometimes the matter is based on taslim. It's based on submission. Sometimes the illah of the tashri' or the reason behind that obligation is mentioned. We are informed of it. For example, Allah informs us the obligation of zakat, the reason behind it. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُم وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. He mentioned the illah of the tashri'. He says, take from them a charity that will purify them. And he mentions purification in two different ways. تُطَهِّرُهُم وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. So one of the hikam, one of the wisdoms behind giving zakat is purification of the person. To purify the individual from bukhl, for example, miserliness and being stingy. To purify one's wealth. This is a hikmah. But sometimes the hikmah isn't mentioned. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, we were commanded to make up the fasting, but we were not commanded to make up our prayers. So a woman who on her doesn't make up her prayers, but she makes up her fasting. And the scholars, they try to figure out, and they try to mention the illah of the tashri'. But this is separate. This is a mas'ala ijtihadiyya. This is based on their own their own ijtihad and trying to come to an understanding. So they may say that the salah it's 5 times a day, and so there's difficulty in making it up. These are ijtihadat. These are things that come from the scholars who are trying to understand. But the reality is, the hikmah is purely based upon submission in that case. So a woman who's on her menstruals and postpartum bleeding, meaning she gave birth and there's a bleeding that happens, it usually lasts for about 40 days. It usually lasts for 40 days, as it comes in the hadith of Salama radiallahu anha, and this is agreed upon by all of the fuqaha. Unless the woman gets pure, she gets in a state of purity before the 40 days. But it's usually around 40 days. It is not allowed for her to fast at that time, and she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to. Fasting is not obligatory upon her, and it's not permissible for her to fast during that time. وَلَا يَصِحُ مِنْهَا. And if she did fast, it would not be accepted. So in this case, full submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's taysir, there's easiness in the sharia of our religion. Allah says in the Quran, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you. And so the ease can be manifested in so many ways. This is one of the ways in which the ease is manifested. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a rukhsa. The sharia term is rukhsa. Rukhsa means concession. Some people think that taking a concession leads to misguidance. Not always. The statement can be found among some of the scholars, but not always. It's important to clarify that some concessions are taken. In fact, they must be taken, especially if it leads to harm. For example, there's a concession to break your fast if you're sick. Some illnesses, if you fast, it may cause more severe harm, especially if the doctor says that. If a credible doctor says you cannot fast, if you fast, your condition will get worse, you could possibly die, then he must follow. It's wajib upon him in that case to break his fast. Usually, if someone is sick, he has the option to break his fast, right? If he is sick. If his sickness is not that severe, he can fast. For example, if you have a light headache. But sometimes there may be an illness that's so severe that if he fasts, it would cause him darar or harm. In that case, for him to take the rukhsa, to take the concession, is an obligation. So we just want to point out the importance of the rukhsa in our religion. Sometimes taking the rukhsa can be an obligation. In most cases, taking the rukhsa or the concession is optional. But this is one of the manifestations of the ease of our sharia. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَنْ يُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Yani subhanAllah, Allah is telling us the reason why. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to make things easy for you. Whatever He legislated, it's within our capacity. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. And He has created insan weak, as a weak person. So the woman on her menstruals, she cannot fast, and she must make it up at a later time. Some women, they ask a question. There are many questions that arise. Inshallah, during the month of Ramadan, we can try to go over some of the most common questions. So before Ramadan, our intention is to get prepared. And during Ramadan, if Allah permits, we can do a session or two, inshallah, bidhnillah ta'ala, where we go over the most common questions asked regarding fasting. وهذه الأسئلة تتكرر كل سنة. And these questions are repeated every year. So one of the questions that arise is, can a woman take medication to stop her menstruals so that she can fast? So can she take some hubub, some medications that can stop her menstruals so she can fast? The fatwa of the scholars in this issue, the Kuwaiti Fatwa Committee, Fatwa of Azhar, Al-Lajna Daima in Saudi, Al-Majma' al-Fiqhi, and many other fatwa councils have mentioned that it's best that she doesn't take any hubub or any medications to stop her menstruals if there's indication that it will cause her harm. If it doesn't cause her harm, it's permissible. If it doesn't cause her harm, this is the fatwa. But it's better not to take it if it's proven that it may cause her harm. And it's better for a woman to keep it natural. Allah has given her the concession that she breaks her fast, and so she should take that concession. But if a woman were to take this hubub, and it's proven from the doctors that it doesn't cause her harm, then this is permissible. We just want to point that out, as this question arises every year. Next condition, al-qudratu ala-sawmi. In order to fast, you must have the ability to fast. If you don't have the ability to fast, then fasting is not obligatory upon you. And this is based on قوله تعالى, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do taklif to a person except what he is able to do. Wus'aha means what he's able to bear. So Allah doesn't hold you accountable with what you're unable to bear. قال تعالى فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم. Fear Allah to the best of your ability. So if the person is unable to fast and he's sick, for example, right? He can break his fast and he makes it up at a later time. قال تعالى فمن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى. If you're sick or a traveler, you can make it up at another time. فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى. It comes 2 times in Surah Al-Baqarah. So if you're sick, you can break your fast and make it up at a later time. That is in regards to the sickness in which the person is able to recover from. The sickness where one is unable to recover from, according to the doctors, that this has a separate hukum. This has a separate ruling, and we're going to speak about that inshallah. Like cancer, for example. The doctors, they say, this person is a cancer patient, and it's not possible according to the human under capacity. And Allah Azza wa Jal can cure this person. لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يُحْدِثُ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ أَمْرًا. Allah can cure this person. Anything is possible. However, the doctors mentioned that it is unlikely that he's going to recover from this illness. His hukum is different. He is not required to make up his fasting later. So he breaks his fast, and he has to give a fidya. He has to give a expiation. He has to feed someone who's in need, and his hukum is the same as the kabir. The kabir meaning the one who's old, elderly, and he's unable to fast. But before we get to that, inshallah, now we want to mention who is permissible to break his fast. Who is allowed to break his fast. So we just spoke about whom it is obligatory upon to fast. Now, inshallah, we're going to speak about, we're going to mention a few, and we'll complete the rest next week, inshallah, upon whom is it allowed to break his fast. Number 1, the sick person. The sick person can break his fast. It is permissible according to the evidences that we mentioned. Number 1, if there's indication that fasting will cause him harm, then it is wajib for him to break his fast. This is point number 1, according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and others. If it is proven that there is darar means harm, that if this person fasts, it will cause him more harm, he must break his fast. we have a qaida. From the 5 major principles, there are 5 major principles, inshallah, we're going to be going over sometime in the future. It's called Al-Qawa'id Al-Fiqhiyya Al-Khams Al-Kubra. The 5 major maxims in Islamic law. 5 major principles in Islamic law. One of those 5 principles is Ad-Dararu Yuzal, that the harm is removed. So Islam tries this is from the maqasid of the Sharia. From the higher aims and the higher objectives of the Sharia, it is that the Sharia tries to reduce and remove harm as much as possible. And this is based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, La darara wa la dirar, meaning there's no harming others or causing harm, and there's no reciprocating harm. So we try to reduce the harm as much as possible. So if fasting will cause the sick person more harm, meaning that it could possibly cause him to die, then in his case, it's wajib to break his fast. قال تعالى وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not put your hands in destruction. Usually, when the scholars mention this ayah, people think that this ayah is referring to doing something that will cause you harm, something haram, for example, such as drugs, right? No doubt the ayah applies to that. But the ayah also applies to things that are within the realms of permissibility, such as fasting. Fasting is actually a great act of worship. But if fasting is going to cause the sick person illness, then he is putting his hands at destruction or in destruction. So this ayah applies as well. It also applies to things that we may consider to be normal and to be good, to be ta'ah. But if it's going to cause you to destruction, then it is impermissible as well. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not put your hands at destruction. But if you have a light illness such as a cold, a headache, a toothache, or something like that, you break your fast, you break it up at a later time. Now, the next point. A sick person who's sick to the extent that the scholars and the doctors mentioned that he is unable to recover from it, like cancer, for example, or any other chronic illness. The scholars, they say that this person is not required to fast. He breaks his fast. And number 2, he is not required to make up his fast later on, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cures this person. But he's not required to make up this fast. If Allah cures him, he doesn't have to make up what was before. Why? Because before, when he broke his fast, he broke it on the basis that he will not recover from it. So the tafsir of the Sharia, even if that person recovers, the many years that he was unable to fast Ramadan, he doesn't have to make it up, just to be clear. So the one who has an illness, whom the doctors have mentioned, chronic illness, that he may not recover from it, it's not required for him to fast, nor is it required for him to make up his fasting. Rather, he must give a fidya. He must pay a expiation for each day that he doesn't fast. So he's unable to fast the entire Ramadan. All 30 days, he has to give a fidya for each day. What is the fidya? What is the expiation for this person? He must feed a miskin. He must feed a needy person, a person who's poor, a homeless person, a person who is unable to pay his bills, for example. There's different categories. A person who's in need, a needy person, he gives him food for each day. This is the miqdar. This is what is required from this person. You have the option to give the fidya all at once. So you can give the food for 30 days one time. So you calculate, because you give this person one meal. They call it qutul balad, the staple food. For example, the staple food in that region or in your locality is rice, for example, or beans, or wheat, or flour, or something like this. So you calculate, rice for one needy person each day. And so what is the fidya? What is the amount? The scholars, they differ upon it. Some they say 2.5 kilos. Some they say 3. Some they say less than that. Wallahu a'lam, the fatwa that seems to be safe and that seems to be for sure is 3 kilos. Because they differ. Some say 2.3. Some say 2.5. Right? Yazidun aw yanqusuna qalil. They may go a little bit further, a little bit less, because they differ on the amount that you should give. Each madhab mentions that the fidya is this amount or that amount. But Imam Shafi'i says it's a mud, right? Calculations that were used before. Imam Abu Hanifa says it's a sa'. So they differ. What is the amount of a mut? What does a mut or a sa' equate to? So to make things simple, the more the merrier, the more the better, because we know that you have fulfilled the obligation. So if you are required to give a fidya, you give a meal that's enough for one person. That's enough for one person for each day. So if you're unable to fast all 3 days, all 30 days, so you have to give him food for 30 days. So you can give him food each day, or you can give him food all 30 at the beginning of Ramadan. Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu anhu, he gathered 30 masaki, 30 people who are in need, and he gave all of them their meal on the first day of Ramadan. So you can do it like that if you want. Or you can give it to one person who's in need for all 30 days. You can do that as well. You can do for all 30 days, or you can give it to him in each day. Uncooked or cooked. They say it goes back to the maslahah. If it is better, some people, they may need that you cook for them. They're unable to go out. They're unable to shop for themselves. They can't cook for themselves. They don't have someone to cook for them. So maybe it's better that you cook for them. And some people, that they don't need that you cook for them. So this goes back to the maslahah, inshallah. So the person who is unable to recover from his illness, it is not wajib upon him to fast. لا يكلف الله نفسا وسعها. And for each day, he must pay a fidya. So if you are in that situation, or know anyone who has that situation, a chronic illness like cancer or anything like that, please be aware of that. For each day, you have to give a fidya to someone who is in need. To someone who is in need. Some people may ask, from the questions that come up, do we give the fidya, the expiation, do we give it to someone who's local, or do we give it to overseas? Many of us are from overseas. So do we give it to the people overseas? The scholars, they say, if there's a lot of people in need in your locality, you shouldn't neglect them. You should give them the priority. However, if there is a necessity, a darura situation in the Muslim countries, any Muslim country, the Muslim countries belong to every Muslim. It's not a matter of your own country. No doubt that the qurba, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, your relatives have a right. But the matter goes back to the Muslimin in general. If there's a Muslim country that's in need, and a calamity happened, like what's happening to our brothers in Palestine, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve them of the calamity and protect them and take the occupation away from them. I mean, if we know of people that are in a situation and the sadaqat could reach them, hum awla. They take precedence that we give it to them. Or any other Muslim region that's in need, and we know that there are a lot of people who need the food at that time, we should give it to them. And so the matter is not a matter of whether you're from that country or not. Rather, is there a location in the world where the Muslims are in more need of sadaqah than our location? Then we give it to them. Al-Muslimu akhul Muslim. The Muslim is a brother to another Muslim. This aqidah must be established in the Muslim community. We must ingrain this aqidah in our youth, in our children, and in everyone, inshallah, in the Muslim ummah, that the Muslims we're not confined by any borders. So we are all one ummah. We're all one ummah. We're all one nation. And so if there's Muslims going through a calamity in one part of the world, we should try to make sure we help them out with the best of our ability. And one of the best ways that we can do is giving them the fidya. And so let's say you are responsible for your father, who's kabir. We mentioned that the kabir, the elderly person who's unable to fast, we mentioned that he must give a fidya for each day that he's not fasting. You're responsible for your father. And your father said, Yallah, do the fidya on my behalf. Here's my money. Or from your money. You're paying on his behalf. If you know that there are people who are in need, severely in need of that sadaqah in other parts of the world, try your very best to allow the sadaqah to reach them in a safe, reliable channel, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll stop there, inshallah. We mentioned the marid, alladhi la yurja, the one who's sick, who's unable to recover from his illness. We mentioned that he must give a fidya. And we mentioned the kabir, meaning he's elderly. He's very old. He or she is very old to the point that he's unable to fast. For each day, he must give a fidya. This is based on the narration, the hadith from Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma. He mentions that the kabir, the one who's old, he breaks his fast, and for each day he feeds a miskin. And we talked about the ways you can do that. We talked about the ways you can do that. You can feed 30 different individuals a meal for each day, a meal that's sufficient for them, inshallah, 2.5 kilos or more. Or you can feed one person all 30 days. وهكذا. If there's any questions, inshallah, you can contact us or send a message, inshallah, ta'ala, to our WhatsApp group, the TCIC WhatsApp group. We'll stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم